John Emmons, Project Wilbur, he can explain to you what that is. Who knows what KPIs are? Okay, key performance indicators. Lots of small businesses don't even think about KPIs. It doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are, KPIs are really key to your business. So John is going to talk to us about KPIs tonight and the importance of them. So round of applause to John Emmons, everybody. Was that too quick?
It was a little quick.
Okay, sorry, okay. Does anyone want to sing? Jeremiah, you want to come dance? No? Okay. Guys, just after John's presentation, we're going to do the raffle drawings, okay? So stick around if you have raffle tickets, okay? And then we'll have a last half hour of guitar music from Brandon, so we can have some partying and networking. All right, John Emmons, everyone. Thank you.
Hey, guys. So you've haven't heard from an investor. We've probably deployed about $10 million this year, investing in companies through SPVs. So we raise money with different investors. That's what Project Wilbur is. We're a consulting group. We build SPVs and we bring investors in. So we vet deals for family offices. Someone mentioned that earlier. So we work with the people that nobody knows. So VCs are public. They have to deploy capital. So we work with the people that don't, that nobody knows who they are, which is pretty cool, right? So we're going to talk about what we measure. So why you should care, and basically the reason why we would deploy capital. So who am I? So I've done 10 startups. I've exited 5. I've learned from another 5. I've learned from all 10, but 10 startups is a lot. Co-founded 2 of the 10, executive team for all of them. IPO, 4 M&As. Been through pretty much everything in almost every industry except healthcare. So I'm definitely not an expert in healthcare. So Project Wilbur mentioned we do consulting, we do fundraising, we do all those cool things. We also have a software development shop. So we do turnaround services. So these family offices call us and they're like, hey, could you look at this company and vet it for us? We'll do due diligence, DD. So that's a lot of what we do. But we also get called in to fix things, which is why we have a dev shop. So we get pulled in and then they're like, oh yeah, they just spent $800,000 for the last 6 months on software development. And we're like, oh, what'd they build? That's impressive. So we'll get pulled into work on that. And then we do strategy consulting, fundraising, all of that. But we are very picky on that, on the fundraising side, because we usually end up doing the SPV. We get paid by the carry that we do for the SPV. We're not a broker-dealer. And by the way, anybody that offers to, hey, I'll help you fundraise, and I want 5% of whatever you raise, that's called a finder. That could be bad. Because anybody that actually does invest, they can unravel every dollar you've raised. So just be aware of that. Consult a lawyer. Lawyers are good. $500 could save you $50,000. So this was mentioned a little bit. Like, I have a really great idea. I want to get funding. I know that this is great. You know, you guys did a great job covering that. It's super common, right? Like, why aren't I raising? Intuition, ideas, they don't lead to funding, right? They're not data. They're not metrics. They're not KPIs. Your metrics should be a clear roadmap. They should drive you to, like, this is your plan. Forget about an investor. You should have that anyway. You guys should know, like, hey, I want to do this. These are the 10 steps. I mean, you wouldn't build a Lego model without having directions, right? You guys have to write those directions because it's a startup. You got to figure it out. So you want to make sure that all the data leads to a mitigation of risk. Because investors, they want to know, like, 3 things usually. What are you going to do with my money, right? Why should I give it to you and trust you? And when do I get it back, right? Like, those are usually the 3 things. And it's all about mitigating that risk to answer those questions. So let's talk about someone that didn't. So anybody know this company? Quibi? Okay, cool. Do you know what they raised? It's on there. You can cheat.
I'm going to take a guess at 1.75 billion.
That's right. So they did not succeed. They raised a bunch of money, and they failed. They didn't measure anything their users were doing at all. It was a bunch of exited founders. They raised a bunch of money, And every investor, all the VCs were like, oh, these guys are going to do great. Exited, like they've done all of this stuff. It's amazing. They didn't do any market research. They didn't figure out what the users were doing. They didn't look at the customer acquisition cost. And one study I saw about these guys, they actually were spending $50,000 to get a customer. That's insane when you're a startup. So, all right. So you want to make sure that you're breaking down all of your key performance indicators, KPIs. You guys will hear that. You'll also hear OKRs, which is just fancy KPI. It's quarterly. And then you want to make sure that you're focused on elevating success. Like these are think about it like grading yourself. Like when you're doing your homework when you're in high school or college or whatever, your whole focus is, I want to get a high grade. This is how you grade yourself, right? Because you're making something up. You're figuring out how everything works for the first time. Most of you are probably going into a business or you're evaluating businesses that have never existed. They're in an industry or vertical that like you're creating, right? Like the whole smartphone, iPhone, that whole space, completely new industry. Like the whole touchscreen, that experience, like the BlackBerry was the closest thing we had and it wasn't even remotely close. So you got to make sure you're focusing on grading yourself, right? So these data points, so a KPI is a collection of data points. A metric is a data point. So when somebody says, what are your metrics, or unit economics, breakdowns, things like that, that's figuring out your individual data points. You want to break down what all of that leads to. Can you build a business off of this, right? This is a market that you can go after. So I keep walking in front of you, guys can't read it. So you want to make sure your clear vision, your mission statement makes sense, but it's also something that can be measured. When you're going through all of your must-wins, your critical steps for that vision, etc., those are measurable moments. Now, let's talk investing for a quick second. So when we're looking at things, we like to deploy in tranches. Anybody know what a tranche is? I know you know. Yeah?
A tranche?
Yeah.
Well, if you're talking about funding that comes in and then a deliverable is met, and then after that deliverable is met, another tranche of money comes in.
Exactly. So basically, you hit a KPI, money gets released. Most family offices like to invest that way. So it's really good to know how to do this. This is super important. Most angel investors like to invest this way, right? Because then you're holding them accountable. Solo founders, this is 100% the easiest way to overcome, I don't have a co-founder. Because why do you need a co-founder? Mitigate risk. Someone else holds you accountable besides the investor, right? That's the whole thing about fundraising is mitigation of risk. So you want to focus on the entire investment continuum, which means when you're building the platform, you're figuring out exactly what works, what doesn't work. You want to align the talent with the organization, the culture. Culture is huge. I could do a whole presentation on culture. We actually have Brian did a whole presentation on culture with Startup Vegas. Brian works for us. He does investor relations. We have a group of investors that we work with. Hitting your first year targets, that is...
he has a company.
Yeah. How many of you have raised money and do investor updates?
But it's on steroids. Okay.
The little guy raised his hand. I love you, dude. That's awesome. I love it. Investor updates. So let's say you've raised money for your startup and you do updates. Yeah? Okay, cool. So whenever you raise money, or if you have an investment, they should be doing monthly or quarterly updates. Because you're going to have problems. They made enough money to invest in you, they can help solve those problems. I guarantee they're going to add value because they're going to want to make sure they get a return on their investments. Remember the last question? When do I get my money back? Super important. So when you have these problems, you miss those KPIs. Don't go under a rock. Don't put the blanket over your head and hide. Like, ask for help. So, company, they didn't do that. So they raised $850 million. These guys, better place. They had a great idea of pulling batteries out of electric cars and putting them back in. They thought that they could do a battery exchange program for EVs. Now this is back in 2007. So Tesla was just a Roadster. It was just a Lotus Elise body. Nobody was really doing this. They were trying to figure out how to scale, right? They raised a crazy amount of money and they failed. They didn't measure Do people want to do this? Is this something that can scale? Where can we do a test location? How much buy-in can we get? What's the user response going to be? How much will people pay for this? That's probably the most important one. You should probably figure that out whenever you do these things. Or if you're investing, you should look like, it's a great idea, cool. Ask all your friends. Make sure it's right. So you want to break down in your first like pre-seed range, like even if it's a napkin drawing, you're at month 1. I think this is a good idea. You want to break down like within the first 3 months, what am I going to achieve, right? Break down measurable metrics. It could be, I'm not going to spend more than $5K until I know this is working, right? You want to know all the different components that are important. You want to be able to present, assess current performance. I'm testing A/B test. Everybody know what A/B testing is? Okay. So when you're doing A/B testing, you want to make sure that plan A, plan B are both tested, and plan A and plan B are then decided on which one's the good one, and then you come up with a new plan A, plan B, well, new plan A, or plan B, whichever one worked, right? And you just keep repeating until you find the best plan. That's how you reach product market fit. But you can't do that if you don't measure anything. If everything's a hip idea, it's a bad idea. Don't shoot from the hip. All right, so market analysis. Anybody know what SWOT is? SWOT? All right, I got like 5 hands. I'm going to go ahead and just say it. So strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You should have that for everybody that is not like in your business now, but could be, right? Those are your threats. And how are you strong and how are you competing? Because everybody, so big no-nos that I get all the time. Nobody does what we do. Nobody can do what we do. We're the best. You know? Nothing can compete with us. Don't ever say that. Right? Because somebody could jump right into what you do. They do something like you. They might not do what you do, but they could jump right in for a very small amount of money, small amount of effort. And if it's $1 billion company, don't ever say that. So revenue growth rate. I'm like going to go as quick as I can. I have like 5 more minutes probably. And then you guys can hit me with a bunch of questions. So number 1 reason to invest in any startup or any company at all, no matter what they're doing, is revenue. So you want to track that. It's your most important number. And everything that has to do with that, profit margin, and how much money you're actually making. Now, you could make a lot of money. Like right now, we have a company raising, I don't know, 10, 15 million. They have $9 million in trailing 12 months. That's TTM. So that's awesome, but they're still in the red, right? Now, it's because they're R&D, they're a robotics company, they're solving some amazing problems. And when you have a company that is making that much money and they're solving amazing problems, they have to have a couple of other things, right? They have to have IP, they have to have a team, because again, you guys mentioned the people. People's super important. You have to make sure that every single person on that team adds value and complements the other, right? So you want to make sure that your numbers that you're tracking are leading to supporting each one of those pillars, which is problem, solution, and team. So customer acquisition cost, numbers that matter, right? Financial KPIs. So CAC, you'll hear CAC a lot. And if you don't know what CAC is, you should know what CAC is because it's right there, it says CAC. So basically customer acquisition cost is something that will start high, should scale down low. I mentioned it before, 50K for the QB guys. Really, really high. You should figure out how to get it as low as humanly possible, because then what an investor looks at is, okay, if I give you X number of dollars, that will generate this many customers, right? It's a unit economics play. It makes it very easy to understand. With $1 million with a $5 CAC, you're going to grow exponentially. It's going to be phenomenal, right? So you want to be able to communicate that. Lifetime value. I know it's written here, but has anybody like heard this before? Lifetime value. Okay, so that's how much money you're going to make over this person, or client, or business, or whatever, over the course of their existence or engagement with you, right? You need those 2 numbers if you're generating revenue, even if they're way high or unknown on lifetime value. Generating revenue for 3 months, 100%, right? Hey, everybody, we have a 100% retention rate. Just say that. We're 3 months old. Doesn't matter, right? It's a data point. It's a really good data point. You should use it, right? And you can even do a disqualifier. We're 3 months old. We have 100% retention. Sounds great, you know? And also, if you put it off that way, it sounds like you're aware that you're going to lose some people eventually, right? All right, so you want to make sure, I covered this already, but basically the retention rate's really important. The attrition rate's really important, but you also want to share your growth. You want to capture all these numbers as clearly as you can. And then cost per acquisition, which, this is online marketing. It could also be, digital, any form of digital, or it could also be, basically you're monetizing, you figure out the actual value of the marketing dollars that you're spending. And then that also could be personnel. So remember, you have a salesperson, that guy's a base salary, they have commission, that costs you money. You got to make sure you're tracking that. So it's an all-in cost. You got to figure that out. Project delivery times. This is how you get customer retention high, right? You want to make sure that you're actually delivering what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it for what you said you were going to do it for. Because each time you don't, you're going to lose somebody. So we talked about conversion rate. It's very important. Marketing ROI. What do you get for the dollars that you spend? ROAS, return on ad spend. And then these KPIs, they're really important to figure out the sales and marketing goals. So basically, sales is going to be 50% of whatever you're doing. Every startup belittles the value of sales. The most important thing every startup can have is sales. The CEO should be the best sales guy because they convince people to work there, they create the culture, and they raise the money. So that's super important. And if they're not that person, you have to ask yourself, should I invest in that person? Because the CEO, when you grade a startup, the CEO actually has 20% of the grade. So just keep that in mind. Team is 10, or it varies from every company to company, every VC to VC, every family office to family office. But problem and solution make up the rest. And everything points to those two things. There are three things: problem, solution, and team. And they each have KPIs that are attributed to them. So you want to figure out, this is part of that 3-month, first 1 to 3, 3 to 6, etc., right? How long is it going to take you to get to market? Every time you launch a new product, you want to figure all these numbers out so you can actually report that back. If you're getting funded via KPI, you want to be able to map out, like, all right, I'm going to hit these 3 KPIs. I need 500K once I do, so I can hit the next 3, right? Super common way to get funded. Really important to look at things that way. So, Yahoo. Anybody know what Yahoo did wrong? Anybody?
Everything?
Let's just focus on in relation to Google. Okay, so anybody know that Google powered Yahoo search for 4 years? All right. Anybody not know that? It's okay to raise your hand. There you go. All right. So this is one of. So I'm from the Bay, right? I know some of these guys. Great story, right? So Yahoo paid them obscene amounts of money to figure out how to optimize their search, and because they didn't want to do it anymore. And Yahoo was the biggest at the time. This is like the late 90s, early 2000s. And Google said, sure. And they built it out as a contractor with a sunset clause. And they own their IP. Yeah. So when they launched on their own, Yahoo didn't care. They had email. They had you, right? They had 100 other different functions on their homepage. They were still the #1 site. The only thing that saved Yahoo, in my opinion, because they're still important, like Yahoo Finance is pretty powerful, right? They invested a crap ton of money, and that's a measurable amount, crap ton, into Alibaba. Yeah, so they own like 26%. So when it went public, it did very well for them. Or maybe it was 46%. I don't remember. It was a really large sum. So they didn't research. They didn't do their market research. They didn't see how important it was going to be. Another one you could look at is BlackBerry. When the iPhone came out, they thought nobody would care. They thought everybody would need a keyboard. Anybody have a keyboard on their phone right now? No? All right. Kodak. You guys know Kodak invented the first digital camera? Yeah. Again, misreading the market is a misreading of KPIs. So, and that's more business than investment, but still relevant. So that's us. And wanted to just kind of open it up for questions. I know people usually have them about KPIs and what they should track and what they shouldn't track and what platforms to use and et cetera. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Or investing questions, if you want. Yeah?
What's a basic figure for customer acquisition cost? Like, is there a simple formula for that, or is it, basically taking your salespeople, your Google ad spend, and kind of throwing that together and say, okay, I acquire one customer this month?
So customer acquisition cost, based on what you just asked me, because it varies from product to product, industry to industry, and SaaS versus physical one-time sale and all those things.
Okay.
But if based on what you just asked me, I would be fine going off of just ad spend, depending on the age of the startup. Like if you're at pre-seed or Series A, ad spend is fine. If you're at Series A or later, let's say pre-seed, seed, or Series A, I'm cool with ad spend. If you're Series A or later, you should know other data points. You should be able to point to like, all right, our sales team is X, they're profitable because they're covering their nut, right? Sweet. What's that number, right? You should know it. That's another thing. I mentioned KPIs. KPIs are very, very, very important. You should know them. CAC, LTV, all those things. You should know your burn rate. You should know your numbers. I had someone this year who I wanted to invest in. Loved the kid. Awesome guy. Phenomenal business opportunity. Put a group of investors together. We all sat down. We were talking about putting a SPV together. And one of the investors made him uncomfortable. And he got frazzled. And he totally messed up all his numbers. Unraveled the entire group of investors that we had. So I told him to go back and get his numbers right and go sell some more product, and then let's do it again in 3 months, 4 months. And that was about 4 months ago, so I'm hoping that he's ready to go in January. But know your numbers. Yeah?
I've had a couple experiences with customers who wanted 100 to 500 KPIs. And my experience is KPIs come down to a handful.
Yep.
The top one, of course, are you profitable?
Right.
You got a next tier, what are your business KPIs? And then you could have something special to you like network performance KPIs. But the more KPIs you have the harder it is to manage.
So I mentioned that as metrics versus KPIs, right? So if you have 500 different data points, those are metrics. KPIs are going to matter like anything that leads to generating revenue, but like high level, what it rolls up to, right? It's kind of like fundraising. Like all fundraising pitches, all sales pitches fall down to 3 different points, right? Do I believe in the problem? Do I believe in the solution? Can your people execute, right? You really just need those 3 things. Those are the 3 pillars that everything drives up to, right? Yeah.
I do have one question about investors, categories. Angel investors versus VCs.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that the VCs want to go for the throat, like 40%, 50%. Is that one of the distinctions between an angel investor and a VC, where angel investor wants usually less? Okay.
So yes and no. You got to remember who you're talking to, right? So like an investor that is a VC is a middleman. So they raise money from family offices and angel investors. So they have to make a profit, but they also have to provide a return, right? So like most VCs back in the day would just bet on the people. Then Andreessen Horowitz came around and were like, hey, you know what? We'll get you in front of all the right people. I've been at 2 Andreessen companies, and I don't think I could have gotten a meeting with the CEO of Ford unless they set it up, right? Or Warner Music. Yeah, we did this whole crowdfunding of chain smokers across the U.S. at the college campuses. At one of the startups I was at, never would have had the meeting. I probably never would have got the meeting with Warner Music without Andreessen Horowitz setting that up, right? So now a lot of the VCs are setting that up, but now a lot of the VCs are also pivoting to being PE firms.
So the VCs are providing access.
So some VCs provide access. Some VCs are now PE firms. Like Sequoia just announced they're going to be a PE firm / VC, right? Angel investors, angel investors, there's smart money, where they're clever, and they will be just as ruthless as a VC. Most of them want 51% because they don't trust you, right? And that goes back to the whole team thing, right? And then on the other side of the coin, family offices, they don't want to worry about you, right? So they'll hire someone like me to come in and make sure that you're doing the right things. So everybody's got their mitigation of risk, but they're just a little different. Like I would never get hired by, well, I've been hired by a few VCs, but they're small firms. No big firm would hire us because they're supposed to do what I do. Yeah.
You mentioned platforms. Would you suggest any platform to start measuring?
For KPIs?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's all the standard ones like, Meta Business with all their tracking, Google Analytics. I really like Hotjar for tracking like website traffic, like what people are doing. But that's not really a KPI. That's more of like better UI, UX. QuickBooks, bookkeeping, normal balance sheet management, right? Those are like, QuickBooks has some great graphs, super easy. There's a new bookkeeping app called Puzzle, I think, which is all AI generated, which is really interesting. I saw them pitch 2 years ago. I didn't think the team would do it, and apparently they did, so that's cool. See, I'm wrong also. So anyway, any other questions? Yeah.
I'm not sure how to frame the question, so bear with me.
Okay.
What kind of company, or what would it take for me to make an appointment with you? Something like, what are you looking for? You say income. I get that, but it's complicated. Okay, so I have multiple companies that are formed from an idea. Like the execution would be the part that I've got standing offers, I'll put it, that I can't close because the sales are so big that I wonder when I need to go to the Attorney General with, because there's such large projects that might come from some of the ideas I've put together. And even here, like it's hard to explain, like how can you be pre-revenue and have this, a ton of humongous pledges?
Sure. So a pledge, a verbal, like, let's call it a letter of intent or a memo of understanding, right?
Sure, right.
If you had those in writing, let's talk.
Okay.
If you have those in an email where, yeah, sure, I'll work with you, you figure out these 3 things. Go figure out those three things to get an LOI. So letter of intent. So like we would need, I would need some level of traction,
Right.
which would an LOI or an MOU would be to have that conversation, right? Or you've got exited founders, or you have some IP, there's patents, there's something.
Right. I got
that,
stuff.
Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff. So.
But the stuff has to be measurable and defensible.
Right. I mean, I have some contracts.
Okay. Are they revenue generating contracts?
They're permission, and then I've got.
Let's talk after.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you and I could go back and forth about what it could be, and then that would be weird. Yeah. Anybody else?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when do you consider an investor? Like, I've been in business a couple of years. I get contracts. I break even. Maybe I have a little bit of revenue. I'd love to scale. I'd love to go national. I'm afraid to take anyone's money because I'm responsible for my own money and my own employees. And people always say, like, do you have investors? Do you have partners? I'm like, sole proprietor here. Thank you very much. I'm responsible for my own debt. But at what point should I consider that, hey, bringing someone on could really take you to the next level?
So bringing money on or bringing a person on?
Yes.
Those are 2 different questions.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. All right, so if you're bringing both on, so it's someone that wants to buy into the company and will add value, then it's not so much an investor, it's about bringing in a value-added partner, right? That's going to like have responsibilities, be part of an operating agreement, have like vesting schedules and accountability and all those good things, right? and a capital allocation that they need to put in. Like, if they don't want to put money in and they just want to come in and get equity, I always run away from that. You know, have them put something in. That's what I would do. And if they're going to add value and it's measurable, right? Like, then you can hold them accountable. You know, the key word is accountable, right? You want to mitigate the risk as much as an investor wants to mitigate the risk, right?
How about just taking investment money?
If you're a sole proprietor and you're making money, you should just go see about debt financing first. Most expensive thing you guys can give up for anything you're doing is equity. You have 100 points. You don't have more than 100 points. You can't manufacture more equity. You could dilute people, but it's still the same amount of equity. It's still 100%, right? So give up equity when you absolutely know it's the right person, you know, and hold them accountable. Put a year cliff in, right? Like what are you going to do in the first year? And then the answer will be, I'll do X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool. They do X and Y, and they don't do Z. In 12 months, they've been compensated, they've received capital, but they didn't do the 3 things they said they would do. No equity for you. So that's what I would do. But I've been burned so many times. 10 startups. I've been like, you know, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff I've been through. Yeah?
I have one quick question. When we did our first seed round, we gave up 14%.
Congrats.
Thank you. So we're looking to keep that number as low as we can. We're looking now for a second round. Is there any kind of recommended metric that you would use to say don't go beyond a certain number? Obviously, 51% is not the number.
I don't know what you do, so I'll give you high-level advice. We could talk after. Cool? Fundraising in general, pre-seed, seed, Series A, those 3 rounds are 20, best case scenario of 10, 25%. Those are your range for each one of those 3 rounds, right? So you're not giving up 75%. It dilutes each time. You did 14. That's phenomenal. Good job. You're on the way better end. The only way to get those things down is because you have leverage. You have traction. You have exited founders. You have, I think it was pedigree was talked about earlier. You've got 8 PhD Stanford grads and 1 really good business guy that's got an exit. Sweet, right? Revenue is the best leverage you can get. And then IP is the second, right? So it's leverage and then IP. Like, I've got 20 patents. These 36 companies are infringing. You're going to invest and get 10% because we're going to conquer the market, because you're going to help me execute, or we're going to go to them and get licensing deals for 25 years. You know, like, really easy way to like say, yeah, just give me some cash. Let's figure it out.
Follow-on question that is, at 14% we didn't have any product. Now we got a product with some sales. Not enough sales.
Not VCs, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
It seemed to me that now that you're further advancing your company with more product, you shouldn't be giving us as much. I'm very VC-like, Yeah.
right? So I'm greedy, and I want to make sure, because I know we're going to be helpful, right?
Yeah.
Like, we take people on because we're going to help them, and if you came to me and you're like, hey, we need $2 million to hit this next KPI, right? Or these next 3 KPIs, right? I'm going to hold you accountable, make sure it makes sense. Go down that path. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Right.
All right, sweet.
Thank you, John. You wanna?
I got it. There you go.
Thank you, John. That was excellent.